Hi there, welcome to today's painting tutorial. Today I'm going to show you a really easy way to paint some clouds. So the trick for this is we're going to use soft blender brushes. These are actually makeup brushes, but they work really well for this. So I'm going to start off by putting this larger one in some water and picking up some of this light blue. And I'm going to put this in for the sky. These brushes actually hold a lot of water. So when you want to get a lot of water on the paper to do some blending, this works well for that. So I'm just going to put this blue in for the sky. And this blender brush is great for painting skies because the blending effect allows you to get really smooth areas. If you were to use a flat brush, you'd have a lot of streaks here, but these brushes really help you to get nice blended effects with your acrylic paint. Okay, so you can let that dry or you can work when it's still a little bit tacky. So I'm going to grab another blender brush that is quite a bit smaller and we're going to start putting in the clouds. So I'm going to take some gray paint, this light gray, and put that on the brush. And then I'm going to put a little bit of the white on top of that. It's going to help us to get some dimension in the clouds. And then I'm going to start putting in the clouds, and I'm using a reference photo. So when you're doing clouds, it's a great idea to have a reference photo just so that you know what kind of shapes that you're making, because if you do it out of your imagination, they can be too symmetrical and not look very natural. So let's use this reference photo that I have here. And what I'm doing is I'm just creating this circular motion. You can get on the very tip of that brush as well. This is our first layer. And I want to keep going around the edges. I want it to be really blended and I want the paper to show underneath. So I want less paint there. And you can remove some paint from the brush. You could grab some water as well and go underneath it to pick up some of that paint. Okay, and bring it down, just sort of remove some of the paint underneath so that that blue shows through underneath. Okay, so now we'll do that same thing. So I'm going to grab some gray paint and then put a little bit of white in there and then move to the second cloud. And I'm doing a circular motion. I'm looking at my reference photo to try to stay true to that shape that I'm looking at there. And then remove some of the paint and just sort of blend that in underneath and have some of that blue show through. Okay, so then let's do another one. So we'll take some gray paint, some of the white paint. You can remove some of the excess. And let's try to make a smaller one over here. The idea is to try to keep the paint at the top. You could even try to grab a second brush and blend some of that out underneath so that it's transparent in the middle. Okay, I'm going to come down here and start another cloud. Creating a nice circular shape, keeping all the paint at the top. And then bring it down and have that transparent area in the center. Okay, so I'm going to go again with some gray paint and then some white. I'm going to remove some of that excess. And let's make some of these clouds underneath here. And you can also consider perspective. So the clouds at the bottom are going to be smaller than the clouds at the top. So we want most of that paint right at the top here, creating nice wisps. And then as we lose some of our paint, we're getting more transparent as we go down. I'll take that clean brush and blend it even further to get a little bit more transparency. Okay, and then let's put some over here. So we'll take the gray and some of that white, remove the excess. We'll come down here, moving really fast because that acrylic paint always wants to dry on us. Really, really fast. Looking at the reference photo for my shapes. Okay, and then in the center, we have all this transparency because we're running out of paint. We're just going to blend that in and come down. Okay, and then let's make another one over here. So we'll take a little bit of our gray and some of the white, and then bring that over to this section. Getting the tops of our clouds nice and bright. And then running out of paint and blending in. Okay, so you could let that dry or you could work while it's still a little bit wet. So the next trick is you're going to move down to a smaller brush. So this is also a soft synthetic blender brush, but we're going to move down in size. And for this one, we're not going to add any gray to it. We're just going to work with the white. So I'm going to take a little bit of white, remove some of that excess paint, and I'm going to go around the edges of the tops of the clouds. So we're doing that same idea. We're trying to keep most of this color up at the top of the edges of these clouds. And this beautiful brush is going to allow us to get even more smaller little details in these clouds. I'm bringing it down. And it's almost creating a highlight for these gray clouds. So then I'll take a little bit more white and let's make another layer over here so you can overlap some of these clouds and create more than one layer. Think about your shapes. Keep most of that paint at the top. And then smooth it in and blend it down at the bottom. Create that transparency. Okay, I'm going to do that same thing. Take some of the white paint, remove a little bit of that excess, and then let's work on this one. You can get higher in certain areas, but we're keeping that color up at the top. And then you can even have like a paper towel by your side and just remove some of that excess paint when you want to come down, just so you don't get too much white along that bottom area. Okay, let's work on this section. So we'll take some white, remove the excess, and then start building this beautiful shape. Just creating these circular motions with the brush. Working quickly so that it doesn't dry. Creating these nice textures. And let's bring some here. So you always have some white paint trapped in that brush Sometimes the way that you angle it is going to allow more paint to come out. That's just something that you can experiment with, sort of practice. Okay, I'm going to take some more white, remove the excess, and let's come up here. And this is great because a small brush is really helping us get more fine little shapes here. More delicate shapes. Okay, I'm bringing it down, trying to blend it in. Let's bring some down this way. Okay, and then let's work on these down here. So we'll take the white, remove some of that excess paint. And we're creating the circular motion again, bringing this beautiful highlight. And then as we run out of paint, we're blending it down. Okay, I'm going to take some more paint and then create the cloud for this one. So we're going with that really light, bright color, bringing it up, creating the shapes, and then blending it all in nicely. Okay, so you can let that dry, and then you might want to go back and do some more layers. So for some of this, it has gotten a little bit dark. So I'm going to go back, think about where I want these highlights to be, and do another layer. You can always go back and do more layers. Okay, and try to make it as random as possible. I might take a little bit more over here. And as you know, the acrylic paint is always going to dry a little bit darker. So your white might look really bright and intense when you first put it on, but then once it dries, it can look a little bit darker and more dull. So you always might want to consider going back and adding more. Okay, and I think we will call this demonstration complete. So that is how you can paint some clouds with acrylic paints. We're only using 3 colors here. It's really simple. And the key is just to use the different sizes for these soft blender brushes. And if you want to go deeper into painting with me, grab my free guide in the description below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.